long time ago, in a galaxy far, far away, Penguin Random House Audio presents Star Wars: Resistance Reborn by Rebecca Roanhorse. Read for you by Marc Thompson. Prologue. The TIE fighter streaked across the Corellian sky, flames licking the sides of the ship, and thick smoke billowing from its burning hull. The ship screamed loudly as it threatened to come apart mid-air, the dying cries of a metal bird. Below, the citizens of Coronet City paused in their evening commute to stare at the doomed ship. These days, it was not so unusual to see a First Order fighter speeding above the city. The First Order had commandeered the shipyards of the capital to build its war machines. And sometimes those machines failed in a fiery mess. But this ship was different. It was being pursued by one of its own. If the denizens of the capital city had looked more closely at the dying TIE, some of them might have noticed that the distressed ship was of an older model than its attackers, which meant it couldn't have been a prototype out on a test run. What they could not have seen was that the pilot of the doomed TIE fighter was a native daughter, a Corellian who grew up in the mountain town of Dobagwarfel, not so far from the capital. A pilot who had dreamed under a new Republic flag as a child, and when the First Order had arrived, and most of Corellia had balked but eventually bent to First Order occupation, the pilot had fought back. Only now, her fighting days were quickly ending. "Mayday! Mayday! Can you hear me?" the pilot cried into her comm. She blinked, frustrated tears from her eyes, tasted blood in her mouth. Her head throbbed from where she had taken an earlier blow on the head in the firefight. "Can anyone hear me?" she cried again. The pilot cycled desperately through the secured channels that the Resistance had provided her when she'd taken the mission, but no one answered. She tried the Raddus again, certain someone there would hear her. But nothing. Either the attack on her ship had severed the communications module, or the channels were being blocked. She let out a small sob as the stolen TIE shuddered and rocked beneath her. She could feel the heat at her back, smell the acrid scent of the engine smoke as it filled the cockpit. She knew she only had seconds left to live, and she didn't want her mission to have failed. Her assignment after the Hosnian cataclysm had been to help make sure the construction of a planet killer never happened in secret again. And the pilot was certain she had found something that would help defeat the First Order in the stolen encryption key she now had in her possession. But the precious codebreaker would die with her if she couldn't pass it along. With a shaking hand, she quickly shoved the small data chip into the port just below her ruined holo-display and held her breath until the console acknowledged it had read and uploaded the file. She smiled, small and grim. She would not fail. If she couldn't get through to her Resistance contacts, perhaps there was another way from her past. She briefly clutched the small snake pendant she always wore around her neck, muttered a plea to her gods, and then, from memory, she punched in the illegal radio signal that would call the only person she still trusted on her homeworld. She held her breath and waited. But no one answered, and it was too late. She couldn't wait to confirm the connection. She would just have to hope. She hit the command to transmit, knowing that sending the key put her friend in danger. If anyone found out, they would have a first-order target on their backs. But she had no choice. A bright blinking green light told her that the transfer was complete, just as a blinding brightness surrounded her. She opened her mouth, but she didn't have time to scream before her world disintegrated around her. The citizens of Coronet City watched the tie explode into nothingness. Some curious, most apathetic. And they continued on home to waiting families and household pets, or to the cantina to meet with friends, or to 1,000 other places under the setting sun. The exploding tie didn't even make the evening news feeds, and by the next morning, it was all but forgotten. Chapter 1. Leia jerked awake, her head snapping back against the rough fabric of the headrest. Her hands grasped for purchase in the armless chair as she tried to keep herself from falling. She cried out, a small startled breath in the otherwise empty room, as her fingers clasped around the edge of the console table. It took her a moment for her senses to come back to her, and for her to remember where she was. The low hum of machinery and the distant clank of someone doing repairs, even at this odd hour, told her she was on the Millennium Falcon. Not on the Raddus during the First Order's attack, when she had felt the presence of her son nearby. Not in the cold darkness of space into which she had been flung immediately after. She had been dreaming just now. The same dream that had plagued her since it happened. She was alone, cold, her body failing, her spirit lost, surrounded by the vast emptiness of space. In real life, she had woken, and the Force had flared hot and alive in her, and it had brought her back, guided her to safety. But in the dream, she stayed suspended in the void, failing her friends, her family, and the people she had vowed to lead. Failing her son, most of all. Everyone she loved, dead. When did I get so morbid? She muttered to herself, pushing her aching body upright in her chair. She knew when, since she had died. Well, almost died. She'd had plenty of close calls in her life. The bombing during her senatorial days back on Hosnian Prime. The torture session with Vader that even now, decades later, spiked her adrenaline and set her on edge when even the barest hint of that memory surfaced. A million narrow escapes with Han back in the days of the rebellion. But nothing quite like being blasted out of that ship, drifting through space alone. She rubbed a tired hand over her face, looking around. It had been a long few days since Chewie and Rey had shown up on Crait to rescue them from the First Order. Since she had seen her brother again, and lost him just as quickly. She wondered how much she was supposed to suffer in a single lifetime. How much exactly one person could take. But then she put that indulgent, self-pitying moment away. She had work to do. The communications console of the Millennium Falcon was laid out before her, silent as space itself. When she had called for aid on Crait, sending out her distress signal to her allies, she was sure someone would respond. But they had not. And the fact still shook her. Were they alive? Was her signal being blocked? Or, the answer she least wanted to contemplate, did they just not care? No. She wouldn't believe that. Couldn't. Something had happened that prevented her calls from reaching friendly.
Sample complete. Ready to continue?